The story kicks off in 60 AD, back when the Roman Empire had almost taken over all of Europe, except for Britannia, which wasn't ready to bow down. On the island of Mona, the Romans showed up to wipe out a group of about 300 druids. These druids believed in this legend about a warrior goddess who'd eventually save them from Roman oppression. Even as they were being executed, they prayed, clinging to that hope. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Commander Paulinus updated Emperor Nero on the situation, sharing the druids' belief in a savior. Nero wasn't thrilled about the idea of a chosen one rising up, so he made a rule that women couldn't hold positions of power, just in case. Over in Britannia, the Iceni tribe was living relatively peacefully under King Prasutagus and his queen, who had 2 daughters. Things started to shift when a warrior named Kieran warned the king about Catus, a new Roman official who had a clear dislike for Britannia. While the men talked politics, the queen spent time with her daughters, teaching them languages, pampering them, and taking them to the market. But things got real when they came across some men being crucified. The queen thought they were criminals, but her maid explained they were Christians executed for their beliefs. Shaken but determined, the queen carried on with their market trip. At the market, they ran into Trinovant warriors who recognized the queen and called her Buddika, the name of the legendary goddess. This got everyone's attention, including a merchant who tried to intervene in the name of Rome. Things escalated when one of the warriors, Cardamanda, killed the man, forcing everyone to scatter before the Roman guards arrived. Back home, Prasutagus had to smooth things over with the Romans to clear his wife's name. For a year, the queen wasn't allowed to visit the market and had to rely on servants. Curious about why the warriors saw her as a goddess, she asked her husband, who suggested it might be tied to her ancestry. One afternoon, the queen spent time playfully sparring with her daughters using wooden swords. Prasutagus joined in, and they noticed Kieran looking somber, still mourning his family lost in the war. During this time, Prasutagus decided to gift his wife a special sword, the Buddika sword, a mystical weapon made by the druids. The blade shimmered in the firelight, hinting at its magical origins. The peace didn't last. The next day, Catus showed up in their village, forcing Prasutagus to bow in submission. During a tense dinner, Catus made it clear he wanted their land and fort. Prasutagus told his men to be on their best behavior, worried that Catus might use any excuse to destroy their village. Prasutagus sent Kieran and his men to round up local bandits to show Catus how dangerous the area was, hoping to dissuade the Romans from settling there. But tragedy struck when Kieran returned with news that Prasutagus had been killed in an ambush. Devastated, the queen lashed out at the warriors, blaming them for failing to protect their king. Without a male heir, the Iceni tribe declared the queen as their new leader, giving her the royal torque as a symbol of her authority. But their celebration was short-lived. Catus stormed in with Roman soldiers, rejecting her leadership and declaring that Rome would seize their land. To make matters worse, he revealed that Kieran had betrayed Prasutagus, leading to his death. Catus ordered the queen to be publicly humiliated. She was beaten, branded with Nero's initials, and tied to a tree while her tribe was forced to watch. Later that night, Cardamanda and the Trinovant warriors snuck into the Roman camp, killed a few guards, and rescued the queen. They carried her to safety, nursing her back to health. As the queen recovered, she reunited with her daughters, who had also been rescued. The Trinovant tribe rallied around her, viewing the brand on her face as a mark of leadership. They urged her to unite the tribes against Rome, saying she had no choice but to fight. Determined, the queen started training, but her fighting skills were rough. A warrior stepped in to teach her proper techniques, but training was interrupted when Cardamanda brought her the Buddika sword. She'd retrieved it after killing a soldier who had taken it. The queen was deeply moved, but a warrior pointed out that the sword's bronze material wasn't ideal for combat. Things got heated when Wulfgar, another tribal leader, showed up. He mocked the queen's lack of experience and even broke her sword, throwing it into a river. Undeterred, the queen dove into the dangerous currents to retrieve it. To everyone's amazement, she emerged with the sword, now miraculously restored. This act earned her the respect and awe of those around her. Wulfgar announces that he and his men are officially on Boudica's side. That night, the warriors return the royal torque to her in a ceremony, officially declaring her the leader of the United Tribes. During the event, Boudica delivers a heartfelt speech about reclaiming their freedom and suggests launching a surprise attack on Caida's convoy in 2 days. Wulfgar isn't entirely convinced, pointing out how strong Caida's army is and the risks involved. But when Boudica makes her sword float back to her hand like it's got a mind of its own, everyone takes it as a sign that the gods are on her side. Determined to face the Romans, Boudica heads into the forest alone. Wulfgar and his warriors soon follow, deciding to stand with her. Together, they chant her name, ready to fight as one. 2 days later, Kieran, now part of the Roman army, is leading a convoy through the woods. They run into Boudica standing alone on the road. She demands to speak with Caida. Kieran brushes her off at first, but when she threatens violence, he goes to get his commander. When Caida arrives, he doesn't even recognize her. Taking advantage of the moment, Boudica claims her status as queen, summons her sword, and kills him on the spot. This is the cue for her hidden warriors to spring into action, surrounding the Romans. A fierce battle breaks out. The Romans try to fight back or escape, but Boudica's forces show no mercy, cutting them down one by one. Boudica herself fights fiercely, even when she stumbles or loses her weapon. By the end of it, not a single Roman soldier is left standing, and their heads are gruesomely displayed on spikes. After the fight, the tribe loots the Roman bodies, collecting anything valuable. Kieran is caught trying to run and is brought to Boudica. Furious at his betrayal, she stabs him repeatedly until Wulfgar steps in to calm her down. She eventually decides they should head for Camullos next. Wulfgar agrees, but suggests stopping to get the Druids' blessing first. That night, the Druids give their blessing, a ritual that involves drinking from Caida's skull. Yep, it's as grim as it sounds. Later, Wulfgar tries to charm Boudica, even though he already has 2 wives. She turns him down, staying loyal to her late husband, King Prasutagus. Alone, Boudica is approached by a druid who speaks to her about life and death. The druid drops a bombshell. Her daughters have died. Boudica struggles to accept this, reflecting on her family's past as the druid tells her their spirits will always be with her. The druid also predicts that Boudica's own life will soon come to an end, but not before she leads her people one last time. Disturbed, Boudica asks Wulfgar if he can see her daughters. When he admits they're not real, just figments of her imagination, she collapses, overwhelmed by grief. Later, as she lies in bed, she sees the apparitions of her daughters. Though she knows they're not real, she finds comfort in their presence and promises they'll be reunited soon. A few days later, Boudica and her army reach Camullos, a town filled with retired Roman soldiers. The locals have been wiped out to make room for this Roman settlement. Taking the town is easy for Boudica's forces, who massacre the elderly soldiers without hesitation. The heads of their enemies are severed, the town looted, and everything burned to the ground. Boudica declares this is just the beginning. Back at camp, Boudica notices the warriors marking their faces like hers. At first, she's upset, seeing the mark as a symbol of her past humiliation. But Wulfgar explains they're giving it a new meaning, honoring her as their leader. The battles continue. In Cambridge Forest, Boudica's forces ambush another Roman convoy, killing the soldiers with brutal efficiency. Over time, her army grows stronger and more ruthless, taking heads as trophies. Later, they launch a nighttime attack on the Roman harbor in London, setting ships ablaze. The Romans try to defend themselves, but are no match for the tribes. Boudica personally takes down the Roman captain, savoring the victory. Back in Rome, things are falling apart. Riots break out as the people grow tired of the expensive and seemingly endless war. Emperor Nero, feeling abandoned and believing he's better suited to music than ruling, takes his own life. Commander Paulinus, shaken by Nero's death, vows to restore Rome's honor. He rallies his troops, announcing their plan to head to Britannia. When word of Nero's death and Paulinus' march reaches Boudica, the tribes grow anxious. Wulfgar warns Buddika about the strength of the Roman army, suggesting they pull back and regroup in the north until spring. But Buddika, driven by her daughter's spirits and unwilling to align politically with Wulfgar, refuses to back down. Unable to agree, Wulfgar leaves with his men, leaving Buddika with only the Trinovant tribe. The next day, Buddika learns that Paulinus is headed to Watling Street. Refusing to back down, she rallies her tribe with a passionate speech, vowing to reclaim their freedom. But when they confront the Romans, it turns out to be a trap. Paulinus has set up a strategic ambush. Armed with archers, the Romans unleash a deadly attack. Desperate, Buddika tries to shield her warriors with her carriage, but it's no use. Her forces are quickly overwhelmed. As her tribe is being slaughtered, Buddika sees her daughter's spirits. They tell her it's time for her to join them. Still, she refuses to give up and fights on. Just then, Wulfgar and his men return, launching a surprise attack. For a moment, it seems the tide might turn, but the Roman superior numbers prove too much. Wulfgar and Cardamanda fall in battle, and the remaining warriors are wiped out. Consumed by rage, Buddika takes down as many Romans as she can until her daughter's spirits appear again, urging her to let go. At that moment, she is struck by an arrow. The Romans surround her, stabbing her repeatedly until she succumbs to her injuries. In her final moments, Buddika dreams of reuniting with her family in the afterlife. Fast forward to modern times, and a statue of Buddika and her daughter stands in London, honoring her legacy. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, hit dislike twice, just to be sure. Don't forget to check out the full movie and subscribe for more stories like this.